3,000.
What is doing? My name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. Before we start today's episode, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share this video, follow us on Instagram, do all that stuff. I want to keep bringing you more 3000 podcast episodes, and the only way that I'm going to be able to keep doing is people support the channel. So do that. It costs you nothing. It takes a second. I appreciate it. Now let's get to the episode. Cheers.
And Pegs wants to sign this one to Obese, and I'm keen to do that because I see the amount of effort that he's putting into other people's records, and they're spending money on a publicist and doing all this stuff. And it's like, fuck, I want a publicist, you know what I mean?
Because he had the calling, which was on Obese, which
but even before that, I think he was like, you know,
championing other records.
He was, yeah, it was like a, I don't know if he knew what he was doing 100%, but he was definitely giving it a good crack, right? It just being a record label and sort of having a much higher turnaround of releases, maybe.
And a bigger picture mentality.
Picture mentality. It wasn't just like, we're not going to fuck with the mainstream. Nuff Said was more kind of like, you know, stoic and kind of like, this is what we're like an underground independent label. Mm-hmm. We do this thing. We find a lot of this other shit kind of almost repulsive.
Yeah, it's all about the art.
It's all about the art. It's a very kind of like, you know, it's a fucking great ethos to have, but it's like you can be stuck there as well, which is kind of how I was starting to feel.
But from their point of view, they're like, well, this is what we do. We don't want to be commercial. We don't want to be on the radio.
There was never any promises to be anything else. So it's not, it is what it is, right? So, yeah. So I'm keen to sign my third record with Obese, and that causes problems with Nuff Said due to the fact that like now Nuff Said have ties to a rival hip hop shop in Richmond.
This is it.
This is it. So like, and the funniest thing about this whole story is like, I'm in a rock and a hard place. I'm just thinking about the music, which is what I've always done. It's like the music comes first, all this other shit. I don't own a record shop.
Yeah.
So I don't have a horse in the race there. But like, the funniest thing about that whole time period is Jaws, who was running This Is It, was my fucking shoulder. It's just like he was my ear to like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And he was just like, man, you just got to do what you got to do. So I signed with Obese, and that becomes a thing. I think now that as that's happening, Muffin Plutonic, we have our first record come out, and we immediately get love from the sort of more staunch underground, and we also immediately get love from Triple J. So, you know, that's the thing already.
For sure. And that's off the back of, I guess, the Hoods and also Pegs as a solo artist getting love on Triple J, him having a direct line. I don't know what his relationship was like with Kingsmill, but I bet you he could get his CDs straight into there.
Well, I remember that Axis was a feature record, I'm pretty sure, and I'm pretty sure I whacked together like some instrumental for Pegs to use as a version, which we did. I think we did a John Butler song or something.
Yeah, they do. So they do love it.
I think I just made the instrumental and gave it to him. That's your version. I mean, it's just going to be you, but
I had someone who was on recently, not from the hip hop world. It was from the Bennies. Anti from the Bennies, he said that when he did a version, they said you could only do these songs that we sort of play on the radio.
Yeah,
so at that time to do John Butler, they would have been, yep, we're all about that.
Well, I remember the first one that Muffin Plutonic did, we did Talking Heads. So
and there's someone on the cuts there as well.
Frank. Yeah, this is like maybe a year or so into the future from where we're at the moment.
They just put that online last year.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And I saw it on the Triple J YouTube or whatever, and I sent it to Frank, and I'm like, "Is that you?" He's like, "Yeah, man."
It was a good idea. I think we made a good attempt. I think they kind of like, and this happens a few times over the years where like we end up using a sample that it turns out we can't use. So at the last minute we have to change it for something else, which kind of ruins our take a little bit.
Right.
It makes it a bit lesser, but you know, it's still a thing. You get the idea.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Okay, we're back with refreshments.
Where are we?
I think we decided we're in 2004.
2004. Okay, cool. So The Calling is blown up. I'm on that tour. My second solo thing is out that year.
But I don't want to cut you off. But I just want to mention this happens a lot on this podcast.
Oh, just to go, just the history, just aligning everything without any stories in between. I'm so sorry.
No, but what happens is in this podcast, whenever we talk about rap in Australia, in Melbourne, the timeline is sort of pre The Calling and post The Calling.
Kind of is a bit like that. I would also say like I feel like the era that's not spoken about too much as well as like, I mean, a little bit. We did go on about the 80s into the 90s. The 90s was a super interesting period. A lot of shit happened. A lot of people were figuring stuff out. There was a lot of cool gigs going on. I know people have mentioned Big Bamboo before, but like that same place was also a reggae spot. So I knew it also was a reggae spot. And I used to play
North Melbourne?
Yeah, it's in right across from the Vic Market. Okay, yeah. And so I used to play reggae shows there as well, as it being known for a rap spot.
Because it was only the hip hop thing on a Sunday night. Was that right?
So they had different. I think it was mainly like a dancehall reggae kind of joint.
2004, we're sort of talking, and this often comes up on the show where people talk about there's pre-calling and there's after the calling in the landscape of Australian music, but you were there to see that change, like firsthand.
Yeah, and I think like I guess the thing to remember is that the calling, like the Hoods as artists and the calling as a record wasn't something that happened from afar, and they were just like another bum in the shower, I guess, like with all of us just trying to make, we didn't know who was going to pop off or if you could, be that successful making that kind of music. No one had any idea, but we were maybe trying, maybe even subconsciously trying. Who the fuck knows? I can't speak for everybody, but we were just all busy and all energized off what everyone else was doing and just making records,
Yeah.
And doing shows and just, I mean, we just bullied ourselves into the Australian music scene. It's what we did.
Yeah.
We started showing up at festivals and stuff. I remember like, I don't have many full stories, but I definitely remember little moments that like I think about, like rocking up to a festival one time and, sometimes with you backstage, you might share it with another band that had been on maybe 2 hours before you or whatever. Someone has it after you. You have it for a certain amount of time.
There's some socializing that happens.
You have to like swap out. So like the backstage people will come and swap out your rider and then get rid of them and blah, blah, blah. I remember this rock band would refuse to leave the backstage and wouldn't give us our backstage because we were, hip hop crap.
An unnamed rock band?
Unnamed. Obviously I know who it is, but yeah.
Like,
it just sticks in my memory as like, I just, not to single that out, but just that is just a slice of like some of the attitude around like in the early 2000s. I mean, not even to mention like the 90s. I don't know, because I feel like it was separated enough to not really be that confrontational. But because by the early 2000s, we were stepping on into that thing, like, 2000 onwards, we are doing festivals where you have multi-genre festivals and stuff, and you do run into these people that think that that's shit. What the fuck are these guys doing here?
I bet these guys now would like to be supporting the Hoods when they do big shows.
Who the fuck knows? I don't know, but I feel like music is on that level is like a lot healthier now because you can kind of do everything and in between, and you can mash up whatever you want, and there's probably an audience for anything pretty much.
Yeah.
Like I for one, I'm glad it's not, even from a hip hop's perspective, I'm glad it's not that staunch.
Yeah.
Because it's boring after a while,
For sure. Is there times now when you're doing these big shows with those guys, and we are jumping forward, but let's just sort of talk about it now while it's hot on my head. Is there times where those guys sort of talk to you and look at each other and go, can you guys fucking believe we're doing stadiums and shit like that?
Yeah. I mean, I can't, I remember one experience which was like, it would have been 2019. So there's also, you were talking before about there's pre the calling and post the calling. There's also pre-pandemic and post-pandemic.
There it is.
Pre-pandemic, doing a show at the MCG for the second support we'd done at a stadium in, almost 10 years for Eminem. And I had, whatever the number one song that had gone platinum that I'd produced for them that week, playing a show at the MCG on drums in front of fucking 80,000 people. It was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I'm about to play this song that I produced that's just gone platinum in front of a stadium full of people.
Just before one of the biggest artists in the last 100 years was on stage.
Yep.
That I fucking made it. Do you know what I mean? It must have been a bit of a moment.
Pretty crazy moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, look, I don't know the Hoods personally, but I could imagine that they couldn't have even written down that they would be as successful as they ended up because there was no template for that.
Yeah, that's right.
That realm.
I mean, there were I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Coolism had won an ARIA before before Nosebleed Section had blown up.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that was 2003.
1200 Techniques, maybe?
1200 Techniques also won one for Karma.
Yeah. Which had a really cool film clip.
I feel like that was like definitely around that time was the turning point for a lot of people it seemed like every little thing like that happened. And there were many of they're two bigger moments, but there were many sort of smaller moments as well that made people think it was leveling up and things were becoming a bit more possible. Mm-hmm. So instead of like going to the pub and asking for the shittest night of the week to play a show, we're now doing national tours, headline shows in clubs, and also doing festival stuff.
Yeah. I tell you what else sort of happened, because this is around about the time that I finished high school, like 2001, 2000-ish. Nova became a radio station. It didn't exist before that. Now, when Nova became a radio station, they would play Hoods and 1200 Techniques and more hip-hop that you would even like American hip-hop, but stuff that you wouldn't hear on the more commercial channels like Fox and stuff. So that kind of pushes it into the realm of popular culture as well.
Yeah.
That changes everything.
I mean, I don't think I was paying attention to that, though.
I was, because I was at
high
school,
yeah.
you know?
It's just sort of like, I think like, even through the 80s as a kid, like, I just remember, Triple R and PBS and all those shows they were the fucking saving grace of a kid from the suburbs that wanted to get into alternative music. I remember going to do Chrissy's show, Step Into the AM, and PBS when it was in St Kilda. I think we did. I've still got the tape of when we did an interview there, and it was New Year's Eve 1995 or 4.
Yeah, you would have been living around the corner.
Yeah, it would have been around the corner. Let's go play our new shit to Chrissy. It's the only way we can play it. But yeah, those were probably, if I was listening to the radio, I actually don't even think I had a TV from like, I didn't even watch TV all through the 90s. I think we just would go to like video stores and hire out fucking underground films and stuff without sounding like a tosser.
No, but
we were just in our own little bubble,
For sure. But I think that when in the late 90s, early 2000s, even the commercial like Channel V and stuff start playing Aussie rap, which is just, it changes it and it opens up the festival scene.
I remember being uncomfortable with a lot of that stuff.
You didn't like it?
Well, I think to some degree a lot of us were willing to, that very first round of obese artists, you have Draft and Funk Wars and Hilltop Hoods and Muffin Plutonic and blah, blah, blah. We were all kind of like, willing to play the game a little bit to see how far we could take it. Maybe not even on a conscious level.
It's uncharted territory.
It's uncharted territory. So when Channel V have a competition called Aussie Frickin' Hip Hop, where they have dudes have a freestyle battle kind of thing, but it's on TV, and they ask you to be a judge, it's like, I think this is kind of whack. But
is that on the back of 8 Mile and stuff though? Are they piggybacking off?
When did 8 Mile come out?
Around about that sort of 2000, early 2000s.
Yeah, maybe it was. Yeah. But it was like, this is like around that time. This is like, because it would have been just after it would have been after Hunger Pains, but not before the second record, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, so it's later than that. Yeah.
It's 2004, 5, into 5 probably.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, then we haven't really delved into the Muffin Plutonic stuff too much.
Right.
Well, we did a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
So you did that calling show with him.
I know.
Muffin?
So Muff is doing a solo set,
Yep.
and some of his set is like some material we're working on, but he's just playing it live. I guess just testing it out. None of it's been released. I'm doing a set with Select and Pegs, who have also produced for.
And you're signed to Obese now.
I'm signed to Obese now, I think.
Right.
It might have even been just after this. But I think that was one of the deciding factors, actually, because I thought not only does I will have a budget to put this record out, I'll be able to do a double LP. There's so many factors to do with just the music side of it. But also, like, I'm producing and doing engineering to fucking countless releases on this record label, and I'm touring with the label boss, and I'm going to put a record out with another signed artist.
It all makes sense.
It just makes what I should just be signed to this label because I feel like I'm already on the label, but I'm just not on the label. I'm already there. I've been doing this shit for a couple of years simultaneously anyway. So yeah, well, me and Dan, Muff's record comes out. We immediately get a feature record. And we get laden with like opportunities basically, but we walk this really great fine line where we can do. We're not disrespected by our peers, but we're also managing to get a lot of love on the radio, and we're doing. I think this might be even a year or so later, but we're able to do like one night stands and stuff for Triple J, and we're doing on the same bill as like a gig out in the middle of the desert with Powderfinger or something.
Right? And once Triple J, once you get in their good books, they're
as long as you don't fuck it up, I guess. Yeah. Hey, who could have saw that coming? But so like once Hunger Pains came out, that was kind of like I just felt like this is the thing I'm going to pour all of my energy into. So I simultaneously, I think 2004. Axis, Hunger Pains, and my solo record. I had solo record in 2004, and then I did one the next year, came out with another sort of 14, 15 track record.
Radio play and spins on the TV.
We're getting all that sort of stuff. We're getting lots of opportunities for festival touring. So we're actually starting to get into like, what you would say would be an album cycle. It's like, okay, we can put out a record, we'll get radio play, we can do shows off of the back of that, and people that we're not in the same city will know who the fuck we are. Yeah. And they've heard of our music because it's on the J's, and that gives us so much more leverage to get shows. We end up getting, a proper booking agent, and all these things come to us because, this thing's happening at it's a year's worth of like build up, and we're building this thing up, this Muffin Plutonic thing. At the same time, because I'm doing basically the Muffin Plutonic side, show with Pegs, if you know what I mean. Like the setup is basically the same because that's what I'm used to doing years prior with Macronauts and stuff. It's like, we have DJ, have a drum kit, have the loops and stuff, and the MC. I just transport that to the Muffin Plutonic thing. But then Pegs is kind of like, where the fuck is my live show then? So we end up doing this thing where Pegs and Dan and Bones and myself form this kind of thing for a short while called Milk Bar Stars, where we can just kind of do all of our records under one live thing, and we can do all of our material across the show. It kind of makes sense, right?
You get two bites of the cherry with all
two bites of the cherry. That's a great way of saying it. Yeah. So that kind of happens, and that works out well for a minute until we realize it's kind of like more advantageous to maybe just be doing our own thing. Like we're kind of almost wasting time doing a super group because no one's fucking heard of Milk. It's almost like we're putting another name out there for people to be unfamiliar with. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
But
it's like a little bit two steps back.
A lot of weight there.
That's true, yeah. We did a lot of stuff, and I think at the end of the day, by the time we start making our second record, Pegs has moved on to a different live show, and we're just doing Muffin Plutonic shit.
And at this stage, people know Muffin Plutonic as a group, as a duo.
Yeah.
It is one of the most recognizable names in Aussie rap at that stage. And you've also got someone to look up to as far as the Hoods, because they've sort of forged the path. You're like, oh, well, we can just follow this sort of template of how it works.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of, I guess, like not everything about it, but just in terms of the mechanics of how it can work.
Yeah.
And I think, but it's not just us. I think everyone, including the record label, are growing at an exponential rate and figuring it out as we go along. So, behind the scenes, the better distribution is happening through the partnership with JB Hi-Fi. I'm probably not the person to talk to about this. Bias will probably know more about this stuff. But yeah, everything's growing. All the opportunities are coming in. We're being legitimized because one of our groups has an actual hit, and we're able to do more stuff. But at the same time, I feel like Muffin Plutonic, we were just our own unit now, and we're just like doing our thing and making the records that we want to make, regardless of like what anyone else is doing. I figure like even if I have not listened to these records in a long time, but I was thinking about them before coming on this show, and there is some fucking weird shit on some of those records. Like the tracks like the Jason Chapman Sway and stuff. It's like that is a weird beat. There's some really weird beats on Axis as well.
With the creative process with you and Muff, did you have any input into the lyrics, or you just did the instrumental?
Yeah, we would like definitely brainstorm. Dan would always come with his own, like, all of his lyrics and stuff. My help would usually be like a line here or there occasionally.
Or the hooks, did he have
the hooks? Yeah, I'd come up with sort of hooks. I'd also come up with like just like ideas for songs. Like basically like, here's an old blues song. This is the idea of the blues song. Let's do this, but you do your own lyrics, and we'll kind of use this chorus idea for our, not verbatim. Yep. We'll write our own chorus, but this is the idea of the song. Like that stuff happened all the time.
And that working partnership worked really well.
Worked really well, yeah. We'll just like fucking, gangbusters going for it and just like really creative. It seemed to work well because it was less people to wrangle. Mm-hmm. So it's just the two of us. So like, and because there's such a dichotomy and like, here's the music for the most part, apart from, where it overlaps. Here's the music, here's the lyrics. Dan might have input until kind of like, I don't really like this beat, or whatever, or maybe can you make something more like I'm fucking really into Murs or whatever the hell it is. There's a bit of that as well. I remember Heaps Good being a completely different beat. And that was almost like, no lie, it was a piss take song because we'd done this it was more of an experimental beat with him doing the same rap over the top. And then I just sort of like, I found this other sample. Something we were talking about off mic is that like I could always do, because I came from, playing music and a band background, I could always either create my own samples from scratch. I'd always done that, sample myself or play something in or get another musician to play something like a violin or whatever it is. Or I actually have, I'm not fussy in that, like if I find a great loop and it works well as a loop and I don't want to chop it because the magic of it is how it loops, I'm not fussed about just using it as a loop. Yep. I said loop a lot of times, but that's how it is. Yeah. So like that, Hunger Pains was just kind of like a piss take. Let's just do like a sort of like try and do our version, the Muffin Plutonic sad banger, our version of a banger, right? Mm-hmm. So, and that's how that track came out, like, I guess.
But you didn't need to do that because a lot of people, not saying you didn't need to do it, but a lot of people do that stuff because they want to try and get airplay, but you were kind of getting it already.
Yeah.
So the idea of like, let's do something that where we're kind of talking ourselves up.
Well, I think we made that. I think that was the thing that got us the airplay, though. So I think that was our little joke, is that we made that song. I bet this gets airplay, right. And it did, and it fucking did. And it's just like, damn.
There you go.
The world is kind of how I thought it was.
Yeah, but when I think about that song, I just think about the stripped back beat. Obviously, Muff's got some amazing like lines in there.
Yeah,
but the beat is just raw. It's just
it works because it is just kind of like a catchy loop. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, you can I'm humming it in my head right now.
Yeah.
But so as a working relationship with you two, Because I feel like just from this chat we've had in the last couple of hours, you were kind of always searching for the right MC to have this sort of
Yeah.
50-50 partnership with, and you kind of
Yeah.
found it there for a moment.
Yeah. Because I'd had it off and on. It'd work for a bit, and then something would get in the way, or something would happen. So I guess, yeah, with Dan, it was kind of like it just two people pulling in the same direction, magic, right? It's just going to work.
Yeah. You've got the biggest label, independent, with the right ties to push it.
I don't even think Obese really believed in us, to be honest. Because like, if you look at Hunger Pains, the wax version, this is no diss to Pegs. The same year, like I worked on Axis. Axis is a double LP. Hunger Pains is a single LP, and we had to leave songs off of it, which we put on a 12-inch, a few months later, or maybe earlier. Maybe we knew how the album was going to be sort of like programmed. Yep. So we put like Heaps Good on the 12, and we put tracks that we knew weren't going to be on the vinyl. So we had to make I guess that says a little bit about their confidence in us, in that we had to kind of dissect our own wax.
But he also owns the label, so he can do
whatever the fuck he wants.
Exactly,
I guess, yeah, he's paying for it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're paying for it at the end of the day, but he's paying for it.
But that first album sees success, and then I think the next couple of albums get straight onto, like, you're talking like radio play and
yeah, we had feature records on our two next LPs, and we did all the Triple J accoutrements and the Leica versions and all that kind of stuff. When it was just, you just rocked up in the studio, they didn't have the space to do it like they have now. It was just kind of like, it was basically kind of like how, sort of like you see those radio live to airs where someone just comes in with an acoustic guitar and does a song. It was kind of like a little bit like that.
Yeah, a bit more rough and ready.
Yeah.
So that is what a lot of people will remember. Well, you would have hit their radar first with that sort of project. Like, a lot of people probably aren't familiar with some of the other stuff that happens.
I think it was to do with, like, honestly, I think it was to do with like Dan's content as well as a lyricist. I think like he just had a knack of writing songs that people could relate to. You know what I mean? It wasn't like super staunch. It wasn't too far in any which direction, but like you can sort of hear it in acts like maybe Horror Show and stuff. But yeah, I just think like the rap that Dan was listening to, like Living Legends and stuff, is a little bit more conscious. And I think that he was the perfect MC at the time to bring that kind of like more social commentary consciousness in his lyrics.
But not take yourselves too seriously either.
Not taking himself, well, he was always sort of like, that's an Australian thing where like, the tall poppy thing where like you got to rip yourself down before other people do. So like take the piss out of yourself first kind of idea.
Yep.
And a lot of his lyrics are sort of self-deprecating in that way. And I think people relate to that. You know what I mean? It's not too much braggadocio and that sort of thing.
No, it's, yeah, definitely, man. I remember hearing that stuff and I'm like, this ain't a fast food, it's a gourmet saute. I rock it like 2 seconds of morning. I remember just hearing that. I'm like, fuck, that's good. Like, like that sort of stuff. You're like, you weren't hearing shit like that before on the radio.
Yeah. It's just like, it's just such a long time ago. It's like 20 years ago. But yeah, I mean, I just remember that just fell into place with us, pretty much. And my ideas musically and his ideas lyrically just worked, you know what I mean?
For a period of time.
But you gotta remember that all during that Muffin Plutonic period, I'm still putting out my own work and I'm still working with a shitload of other people and contributing to other people's records. So, but it became my main bag for a bit.
For sure. And it must be cool for you as an artist in other projects and as we've established a freelance producer to have that as a project you're happy with and passionate about, which is almost like your cash cow, or not cash cow, but it's your successful project, which gives you reign to sort of do your other more artistic stuff on the side. Which look,
I'm sure there are producers that just want to write for people's records that don't have any kind of like pretensions of getting out on stage and being an artist or whatever. But because I guess because of my background in bands and the way I grew up, it was sort of a no-brainer for me. I just didn't want to be stuck in a studio. Like I wanted to play live and stuff as well. So yeah, I always needed an outlet for that. I'm sure if it wasn't Muffin Plutonic, it would have been something else, but it just worked.
It worked at that
Yeah.
time, and I think that time, the lyrics, everything, all the stars aligned, sort of.
Yeah,
At
pretty
that
much.
point in
Yeah,
time.
we were like Spinal Tappers. We kept we were changing out DJs. That was our only thing.
Right. Well, you had Frank for a while.
Well,
you
we
Bones.
had effects. We started with effects
yeah,
because
Keras,
effects was
yeah.
is Dan's thing from Pure Heads. So that was an easy fit. And then effects I just think he had a hard time touring. So then we got Frank in, and Frank was great to tour with. He was almost like, I would like bounce off him as sort of like my co-tour manager. He was, cause I don't know, he's younger than me. He feels like your dad sometimes. Frank's got that sort of like thing about him, but
He might be offended by that. Let's say older brother.
he's my older brother. Yeah. But he was also good with kind of like, good with like sort of just managing other things as well on the road, I gotta say.
Yeah,
Just
managing people.
managing egos and all kinds of stuff. He was just a good moderator. He still is. He's a sort of that kind of
sure.
character.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I didn't know Frank back then, but I could imagine he was someone who was a bit more mature beyond his years. Especially
Yeah.
on the road, he'd probably hold it together.
He's sort of down to earth, and like I think he just sort of sees a situation and kind of gets it for what it is. He's got no pretensions like that.
Yep.
So he was great to tour with. And then he had, got a family, wanted to do his family thing, was managing the OB store.
Yep.
Time away, we were very busy, ended up getting Bones. So Bones was the last DJ that we had. And that brings us up to trying to think what else happened. So so like I did a record with there's a bunch of stuff that happened in that period between doing Muffin Plutonic records, but like one of them was like working with Speech to Bell, who I'd met Low Tech through doing one of my solo records where he did some MCing on, and because he had affiliations with what's the Warp Records Beats affiliate, hip hop affiliate. God damn it, I can't think of the record label's name right now. But so he had affiliation with Roots Maneuver and that label. They had a new signee, Speech to Bell, who they were trying to develop a record for, and he came to me and asked if I wanted to produce on it, and ended up doing 2 singles on that record, and then she went on to get a Mercury Prize, which is a big deal in
Huge deal.
the UK. I remember tuning into like the news and stuff that morning and just seeing my beats being played on the BBC and stuff with her being interviewed. And she's what the fuck? It's like, This is some weird shit.
Generally, people that win that, if they're not established, they're going on to big things.
Yeah. There's been some like, I don't know what, I think she had some problems with the label. Big Data, that's the label I'm trying to think of.
Yeah.
But I'm not too sure like what happened with that, but that was a pretty magic moment. There's a bunch of other things like that. I remember opening for the first Hoods Restrung show in Adelaide, where me and Dan did the opening for that. That was kind of cool. With the orchestra, it's our first time with the orchestra and stuff.
Again, that's another sort of pinch me moment for
like a milestone.
Well, yeah, like generally the orchestra behind you that you've come when I say you, I mean Aussie rap and everything.
Yeah, it's
has
kind of
come
a bit.
long way.
Yeah, it's a sort of almost passe now. But like, what do? You play with the orchestra? But then it was just like wow, that was like definitely like a little sort of moment,
Yeah, and I think that Restrung album was almost as big as the not Restrung.
Yeah, I think it was like leading on from Hard Road. Would have been Hard Road, then Hard Road Restrung, I'm pretty sure.
And then you've had some tracks that you've produced for the Hoods that have been big tunes as well.
Yeah, been fortunate enough to be let into the room. I was mixing the records there for a bit. That job has been handed to someone much more worthy than me now.
Okay. Have they changed the way that they do things, or they're still the same dudes?
I think like with any career like that, it would be fine tuned every now and then. But like, and also, some of them have families and kids and stuff. That changes you a little bit. But for the most part, I'd say not really. Like, we're not like you're not in our 20s or even 30s now anymore. So that's, you just by virtue of time passing, you're going to change a bit.
Yeah.
But they're great guys, man. It's like that's my safe zone almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you can go play drums, don't have to worry about all the other
Well,
stuff.
like last year, for instance, I didn't want to be creative at all, but I had a world tour to do. So we did, we went off and, we played
How many
like,
countries?
well, we did actually, I shouldn't say world tour. It was Europe and New Zealand, and then we did Japan a bit later.
Okay. But you've also played in North America with them as well.
Multiple times, yeah. We've done multiple world tours. Yeah, so I played Europe multiple times, North America multiple times, New Zealand multiple times, multiple national tours. Like we haven't said that story, but like so post Muffin Plutonic, and I started basically 2010. I wanted to make some different stuff, so I made a record with this US artist called G Love, which is kind of like a sort of blues rap thing, and that sort of primed me to start working with another artist, which was more like a roots artist, Jess Harlan, which we did 2 records with. I also started working with Dielectrics on a record with him. This is all in 2009 into 2010.
Which you're coming off the back of being successful in a group. You're also producing for other people. You're doing work with the Hood. So you're a pretty hot producer at this point in time.
I guess, but like if you look at those kind of choices, like Jess Harlan was pretty unknown. I just was like still working with people that I liked working with.
Yeah,
I
and you
thought
were happy
we could
going
make
in
a
any
good.
direction.
I thought we could make a good record. Yeah.
And you're happy with it.
Yeah, but Muffin Plutonic, not so much. We weren't doing too well. We were on a national tour with Draft, and we got to Adelaide, and the Hoods asked me if I wanted to come on tour and play drums. And I think it was at that point in our relationship where I was looking for a bit of time out, a bit of a breather. It was pretty hard slog from that. The last record we did, we had a couple of Hottest 100 songs. We had an Aria Nom. All these things were happening. But I think internally we weren't really coping. The wheels were falling off a little bit.
Nothing lasts forever.
Nothing lasts forever. And I think we were just begrudgingly, it was just sort of like trying to cling to this thing, but it wasn't working. And I think that's maybe why I started launching myself into all these other collabo records. And so by the time the offer come to play drums, which was at the end of 2011, mid to late 2011.
So you'd known the Hoods for a long time, but you hadn't played drums for them.
No.
You played drums before them.
No, I'd done some remixing, and I'd toured with them and stuff. Right. And so that first tour with the Hoods, my first run of shows was in Canada, and then we came back to Australia and did a run of shows with Eminem at Marvel Stadium. So it was basically like fucking, by fire, like get in there, perform for me, motherfucker.
For people like that haven't toured with the Hilltop Hoods, like everybody, when you go to North America, I understand like Canada has the snowboarding kind of culture which is carried through, but
there was a bit of that. Yeah,
there was a bit of that.
There was a bit of that.
Is there Canadian American people there that just love the Hilltop Hoods, or is it Aussie expats?
There's a bit of that, but there's also like the thing that they sort of cracked a bit was like college towns and college radio. Yeah. So a lot of a lot of their touring choices, I think, were based on where they were getting a lot of love in North America.
Yep.
So we'd do places like Park City and stuff like that, which is like, we would probably have less success in places like New York, which we're playing. We're doing Brooklyn Bowl and places like that. So that's still a few thousand people.
Wow. So that is impressive. Still to do.
Still a few thousand people.
Yeah.
But and then you'd occasionally do a theater in like say Vancouver. You might get 3,000-4,000 people. I might be wrong on the numbers, but some bigger places. And then you do like more college towns as well. But it was my first experience doing bus tours as well, where you're on the double-decker sleep-on bus thing.
Which would be better.
It's better, yeah. Initially, it's better. The first few times you do it, it's better.
Yeah. Then you get stuck with people.
No, it's like, one thing about touring is that you got to be with the right people. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So you're never stuck with the wrong people.
Yeah.
Like you always, that is probably the one gel that keeps it worthwhile, that makes it fun, is that you're with people that you get along well with, and blah blah blah.
And they wouldn't invite you on there if they didn't get along with you in the first place.
I say to people, like, touring, it's probably less than 50% skill, and it's more like if you're a good hang and you fit. If you're a good fit, that probably goes a lot longer than. I can't imagine being on tour with someone who's really great at their instrument, but is an absolute fucking asshole to be around. Like, it's just not going to work. Yeah.
But when you're talking those international tours, whether it's in Europe or North America or whatever, how big is like the bus and like the crew and everything? Like,
The last European tour, let me think. We had probably about 12.
that's a lot, man.
Yeah, I think I might be a bit some of that. We had Nyasa and her partner, who's also doubling as a videographer, to doing all of the video content. The 4 guys, management, sound, lighting, tour manager, whatever that adds up to, something like that. I'm probably leaving 1 or 2 people out.
And the dudes in the actual group.
But sometimes also, like for the North American runs, we would pick up our tour, like our North American support sometimes, who would travel with us.
Are there local supports there?
Yeah, so we'd have like an American MC or DJs, that would travel with us. Sometimes, depends. Like it's just, this shit gets worked out. I'm not like privy to how that gets arranged.
No, but it's just interesting
But
that there's a whole entourage.
Yeah, there's a whole entourage of people, which makes it super fun.
Yeah.
Because you're just on a bus with a bunch of people and, having fun.
And every city's different.
Yeah, even when it's grueling, kind of like it's sort of like everyone's in the same boat and you're just doing the thing, and it makes it fun.
And then the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 people venues, but then you get back to Australia, you're doing like proper state, like you're talking like Rod Lavers and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the last few years of national touring, well, it gets we've gotten less shows. I think we're doing less regional stuff, but we do Groove in the Moo and stuff to account for those things. And then the headline shows for the last few years have been Rod Laver, which is about 14,000, and the equivalent in whatever capital city we go to.
Which is huge.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so cool. It's really cool, and everyone gets to like down to the stage design and the lighting designer and everything. Everyone gets to flex a little bit at those shows, and it's because you've got such a big venue and a big concert to cater to. You get to flex your skills a little bit and really think about doing a show.
Yeah, it's crazy because I can't even really fathom any other groups from a hip hop perspective, except for, you've got your real crossover ones now, like 1-4, and then you've got Kid Leroy. But just to think about anyone doing from a hip hop perspective, doing rooms that big, it was just hard to comprehend.
I think like I remember Paulie's the lighting designer like in 2011, because I'd sort of come up with these guys, and now I'm playing these shows drumming. So I think I just like wasn't really super aware of just how big they had gotten. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I'm doing these shows, it's like, and I just think I said something offhand, like, fuck man, these guys they've got to be like the biggest hip hop group in Australia. And then Paulie just turns to me and goes like, no man, they're just like one of the biggest groups, in Australia.
Drop the hip hop.
Drop the hip hop part. It's just like,
Yeah, no, it's true. Like you try and think of which other Australian groups are doing multiple Rod Lavers, and you would struggle to figure them out.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure they're out there, but
of course, yeah. That Kid Leroy's pulling in. I think that's probably got to be close to 18,000 people. That last show he did.
Yeah, but he's on a different journey.
He's on a
different. You know what I mean?
There are some people just have they got it going on, man.
But man, he started out at 14, 15, putting songs on Triple J Unearthed. So fucking good luck to him, man.
Yeah. I think he's had a lot of shuffled around to different producers and different management and had all kinds of stuff. I mean, I can't really speak on his story to be honest, but like I know it hasn't been like we were talking about earlier. I'm sure it's not a direct line. Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of chaos and working it out and doing lots of different shit together.
Yeah, I look at stuff like that and I feel like obviously those people want to be successful, it's not something I'd ever want.
Yeah,
and I look at that and I'm like, yeah, it's crazy.
I think some people like go into something thinking they want that, and then they get it, and then it's very hard, like mentally dealing with all that shit. It would change your life, and unless it's something you really wanted, I think it would be very fucking hard to deal with.
Man, yeah, I think people think they want all that fame and fortune, they get it, and they would give anything just to have some sort of just normality back in.
I think that's why there's that thing with, which it is very smart. Like as a producer, you just want to be in a room and work with people and write, because you don't have to deal with all that shit. You don't have to tour, which can be grueling for some people. Fucking hate touring, and you can just still get on those records and do those things and do big shit. But you just, you just don't have to handle the other side of it.
No, man. And you mentioned the Hoods played with Eminem a couple of times.
Yeah.
He's also someone who you look at, and I look at him and I think, fuck, I reckon he would love to not be as famous as he
Maybe
was.
sometimes. He's probably like settled into it over the last few years, I'd say. Who can tell?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But
I think you have to really want it to be that level, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
you got, with anything, you got to take the good and the bad. I mean, what a problem to have, though,
for sure.
right?
But I think when he first came to Australia, he went into Obese and just bought some CDs. Like
Right.
this time he's touring, he's not going to do that.
Yeah, I remember that first support. It was Lil Wayne. It was us, Lil Wayne, and Eminem. And I just remember the car pulling up at the back of the stage, because the stage is this huge thing.
This is at Marvel.
This is at Marvel.
But when it was called something else.
Called something else then, Etihad maybe.
Yeah.
And, that stage, all that lighting design and stuff gets built for that show, and then the car just pulls up at the back of that rigging, and then I think he just came straight off stage, straight into the car, and just fucking out of the building, straight to the hotel. That was 2011 or 12, yeah.
And yeah, man, it's crazy. But look, you don't want to, if you were that person, you just do your thing, and one city would be the same as the next.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it would. I mean, yeah, who knows?
Who knows? It's crazy, but it's cool that you get to, and from even with the Hoods though, you get to say, we get to play on the same stage, we get to warm the stage up for these huge.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I just really like the headline shows mostly. Right. I do like the spectacle of like the times we've done the MCG and places like that. Yeah. We did the last Eminem one. We did the multiple tour, so we did like MCG sized arenas in Australia, then did New Zealand as well. Great. So it's kind of like a bunch in a row. So that was pretty pinch yourself sort of run of shows.
Yeah.
I mean, even if the people aren't there for us, but like, fuck, we're there.
You're
fuck
there.
It. Yeah, I like that. You're there.
You're definitely there. But even though you're doing that tour stuff, and like you said, for the last 12 months, you probably haven't thought about making music too much, but you've been touring drumming for them for a decade or so now.
Yeah, so it's been, 12, 13 years almost.
So, but you're still making your own music, you're still working on other projects during that time?
Yeah, so the ones that I'm really proud of are like, I did some projects with my partner, Nicole Reed, who's like a really crazy, I know it's coming from me. It's pretty biased, but she's an amazing photographer, and we did some projects that sort of afforded us to sort of amalgamate our two kind of practices, I guess.
Yep.
Fuck, it sounds like a grant application. But yeah,
we worked on something together.
We worked on something together. Thanks, man. But yeah, it was kind of cool, like just thinking of the idea of like, back when I was a kid when, we used to have these like read-along storybooks and stuff, and having the record in the back, and just doing that with photography and doing these sort of like, I guess they're art books. They're not really travel books, but they're sort of like travel is involved. They're more just like two artists giving through their artistic filter like a take on a place, which was the Field Notes books. But I guess the only pitfall of doing them is we chose kind of like the two most expensive mediums you could probably, maybe not the most expensive mediums.
Physical mediums are expensive.
But physical mediums are expensive, and making a book and doing vinyl is it was a lot of learning curves trying to get those things to work together. Yeah.
Does it become a profitable project in the end though, or it's just an artistic one?
It paid for itself.
That's what
we ended up with money because it took multiple trips to places to make the product. So it worked out in that we weren't out of pocket doing it. Yeah, so it was a good experience. I mean, it was a great experience doing the first one we did crowdfunding for. I wouldn't want to do it again,
Right.
but
But pros and cons, what tell us why?
I think it was amazing, and mostly because it worked. So it was that feeling of like, fuck, I don't know,
we've
man.
gotta
I'm not the sort of, sorry, not the sort of personality that would put myself out there to spruik something. But the way crowdfunding works, you kind of got it. Hopefully, you can do it in a more authentic way. But so putting yourself out there, putting yourself on the edge there for it to fail or work, and it worked. So I guess it was like an amazing thing to have done.
But it puts pressure on you.
But I just hate to think if it didn't work. You know what I mean? That would be a bit crushing, you know.
Yeah, but it did work. So
I just think like I just think for both of us, because we're both pretty introverted, it was really we sort of like pushed ourselves to do it and make it work because we really wanted to get the art project made. Yeah. I think it was very taxing mentally. It was taxing to do it, even though it worked and we were stoked that it worked. Yeah. But yeah, I say I wouldn't do it again. Well, who knows? But like, it was just like a lot. It was taxing. Yeah.
No, I can see it in your eyes.
Oh my God, it's like going back to Nam or something. But like the second one we were able to pay with, funds from the first book that we did, which was cool.
Yeah, it was all worth it. And obviously you learned a lot, but obviously it took its toll on you mentally.
And then I think we didn't do a third. We just sort of like, we don't know if we can keep up the momentum on the third one. And I think we ended up using some of the funds from the second one just to do travel.
Yeah.
Just to travel.
But that's the thing, man. Obviously, you've got an extensive catalogue, very extensive when all the artists you've worked with and all the projects that you've done. But it's really cool that during that time, you very, very rarely compromise your artistic integrity from any of it I've seen.
I'm really grateful. I signed a publishing deal in 2008 with Jamie Goff, who I'd met through doing a collaboration with Renee Gayer back in the day. Like I said, there's a lot of little bits and pieces I haven't spoken about. But and I've kept that relationship till now. So I'm still signed to his publishing company. Yeah. And that's been fucking amazing. That's almost been like through, because I do a lot of records and a lot of different, I sort of like my method at the moment is like, I'm comfortable doing indie labels and I do a lot of just licensing. So like I'll sign a licensing deal to do a record with an option to do another one. Yep. With different labels and stuff. And the publishing has been like a nice sort of through line. Yeah. That sort of ties it all together. Yeah. So no matter what I'm doing or who I'm working for or with, it all sort of tied into at least one kind of label, I guess. Yeah.
And it helps when you're an artist who wants to do your own thing to have that steady stream of income from a licensing point of view as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, man, I think that would be something that I would encourage any sort of younger producers maybe out there, or songwriters. If you're basing your work off a lot of samples, and I know people are pretty good at disguising stuff and flipping stuff and whatever they're doing, but I would really think about publishing as sort of like just something to think about, and sync licensing and stuff like that, and maybe adapting or adding to their methodology like some other ways of making music that they can is more, I don't know, lucrative in that way for licensing and stuff like that. I mean, just thinking about early OB stuff, quite a few of us ran into some problems with sampling back in the day.
But it was a Wild West for a while.
It was a Wild West. It's actually like I get complaints from people why some of the catalog is not on streaming. Obviously. And I think there's probably only about, all of the soundtracks I've done and art stuff and everything else, and there's probably only a small percentage of shit that is on streaming services of my production. So currently, none of the Muffin Plutonic stuff is on streaming services, unfortunately. Maybe in the future we'll try and figure that out.
Is it not?
No, hasn't been on for maybe 1 or 2 years.
Okay.
And there's none of my old stuff. I think my catalog starts at Deep Above the Noise. So I don't have any of the old Nuff Said stuff or OB stuff on there. Right. Just, I'm just like a bit. I am a little bit sketchy on some of it.
Yeah, okay.
I think I was playing, rolling the dice on some things, and it sucks because like some of that music is completely original. And I had horn sections and all kinds of stuff on, multiple things going on and original music, but is some of it is pretty loaded as well. This is like a really bad admission to any like anyone looking to like bust me for samples, but yeah.
No. The thing is with samples, if you're sampling drums, like, how do you know where a fucking drum? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, obviously
well,
there's a pattern, and
there are a lot of classic breaks that people would know exactly where they're from. Over and over. But I think with classic breaks, it becomes kind of like almost like a challenge of what can I do with the fucking Amen break or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it becomes kind of like a culture to itself. Like especially with drum and bass or jungle or whatever. It's just like we're all going to rinse the same drum beat, but it becomes its own subgenre almost. Yeah. Like it's a culture to break beats. You're almost referencing people who have sampled it before you in a sort of knowing kind of way.
But there's
like even if you use the same samples, like I know this is being used, but I'm also referencing that song or whatever.
Yeah, I've often thought about that would be a cool way to make some music. Like look at some really sampled songs and then pull something from those songs that haven't been used before.
Yeah, I'm sure. That
would be a cool way to.
Yeah. I think even that. I think as we get. I just think we live in a scary age with AI and like, there's just so many. I tried to like Shazam something the other day that I heard on a TV show, and just like all I was getting was the rap songs that had sampled it. I could not find out.
Yeah, but
the original sample,
But that would probably be the algorithm saying most of the time people are looking for
that song. Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
That
is true.
On the ranking, yeah.
But that's sort of like even just. If you think about that as a kind of scary thing to think about.
Yeah, and man, AI is not only like shit about that sort of stuff, but it's also shit because people are using it to actually make music.
I've tried some weird shit with it. It's just, I don't know. I'm just like, I've made like a little pact to sort of maybe steer clear of some of it. I did a test on an old like Soul 45.
Yep.
And it was able to strip out the music and just give me the a cappella, but then change the a cappella to a different sort of like a different gender.
And it worked?
And it worked. It was flawless. But the funny thing was like all the little sort of kind of anomalies you get with like an old 45, they stayed in the a cappella. So it had like the little scuffs and things of the record in the vocal performance. Cool. It's really cool. It was almost like having like, this could just be a lost 45 a cappella from the 60s or something.
Yeah. But this is the thing, man. You don't want to be like your dad who doesn't want to adapt to new technology.
Yeah.
Like, are we looking at AI as they looked at drum machines?
Yeah. Look, I've never been one for nostalgia. Like, I'm always trying to do something different and something new. I just really kind of detest that whole like living in something from 20 years ago. In saying that, a lot of the new stuff I've been doing is super throwback. So I'm just been trying to like play everything, and I'm almost using the computer. Whereas like there's so much technology in my computer system, right? Plugins and blah, 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 whatever. I'm sort of almost using it as a tape recorder. And just sort of trying to just play stuff in and do it that way just to see how it works out. But this is just like, it's not going to be my whole bag.
That's where you're at the moment.
It's just a cool like thing to try and do,
Yeah. The Aftermath and Plutonic sort of wind up.
Going back there. So like...
Dielectrics, let's talk about sort of him.
Okay, yeah.
You worked with a lot of other artists.
Yeah. I did a bunch of records over just a couple year period where I was just trying to sort of like go back to... Well, not go back to, but be a little bit more diverse. And just maybe not... I felt like I was just getting a bit stale.
You don't want to get pigeonholed because you like...
There's probably an accumulation of a few things, like feeling a bit stale in my own group, and that playing into like the records that I was being asked to make and contributing beats. Like I actually got a bit sick of like... I noticed this whole swing over a few years period where records I used to call it the supermarket shelf style of making a record, where dudes, it's almost like going down with a trolley in an aisle, shopping aisle, and just, I'll fucking have this beat and I'll have this beat and I'll get this beat. Whereas I loved making records that were just sort of like, a really thought out continuous piece of production. Like even if you have guest producers and stuff, it's still sort of like, you have a producer on it. Even
It's
if
a
it was
cohesive body
a
of work.
cohesive body of work. Exactly. So I think I was still looking to do complete records with people, but I thought I'd push myself and maybe make some different kind of sounding records. So some more root stuff and blues stuff and,
You got to keep it interesting.
keep it interesting, yeah. And then Dietrich's hit me up to make a record with him, which was funny because him and Tubuck had this idea that they wanted to make a throwback 90s sort of like album. And I just sort of subversively kind of disregarded it and made it kind of like what I was going to make anyway. But it is a little bit throwback. It's got a few little sort of like nods to the 90s. But it was kind of like asking someone who had been through the 90s and been making records then to sort of step back 15, 20 years and go do that again.
You weren't there on your journey.
I was just like, no, I got to do something. Let's do something new. We can add. Let's put the kind of like the heart of that production into it, and then just move it up a little level as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that takes me up to that's 2012 into 2010. And then 2 years making the next record for him, which came out the start or the end of 2012, I think. And then I had a bit of time off and I didn't do anything until the end of that year. I did 2 solo releases.
You didn't do anything. You still did solo release.
Well, I think we did just a couple of shows and then took some time off and I did an EP and a single on wax.
That you're happy with.
That I was happy with, yeah.
When you look back at your back catalogue of your personal releases, is it all stuff, like obviously you mature, but is it all stuff that you're happy with now?
I'm not mad at it. I think like I just see it as for what it is. Like it's where I was at that time. It's my kind of like as adept as I could be with the tools I had. It's as good as I could make it. I'm pretty sure if I was there making that record, fucking 25 years ago, that I would have believed in it. That's as good as I could make it. If I listened to it now, it's just like, oh man, this is dog shit. It's not dog shit, but it has its like flaws or whatever. But I think everything does. They say like the moment you kick a piece of art out the door, it's kind of it's already flawed. Like it's never going to be perfect.
And that's something, as someone who's not an artist, I really struggle with, whether it's painting, whether it's music or whatever, how you know when something's finished.
They say it's better to be finished than perfect, which I think is like, that's a good thing to stick to. Not that you just want to be releasing dog shit, but it's never going to be. I think it's good to have a deadline, and dudes that don't, have a deadline, you end up working on something for a long time, and there's no one pushing you to pull it out on a certain time.
Totally. We won't mention any names like the Avalanches, but they.
Well, the great thing about that is that like they can come back from such a hiatus and just absolutely smash it out of the park.
Yeah, and it was an amazing album.
Yeah, there you go.
But it just, I was being jovial there, but like, I think
I remember them when they were like on the getting back to the ABC recovery thing. They reminded me of the Beastie Boys when I first saw them. Yeah. Like they were kind of like that sort of band. Maybe it takes an amount of time. I think that what's really stands out about them is like because it's such a huge amount of time between releases. Instead of gradually seeing the growth, it's just a bombardment of like, this is a totally different thing now.
Yeah, but I often think about that case in particular as something that when you make something like they did with the first album that is so out there and different, when you come to the success for that, do you make something else that's out there and different? Do you make what became popular? And I guess this is the stuff that goes on in their heads until you keep second guessing and throwing out and starting again. And
I just think like it sounds really sort of sounds dumb, but like or maybe a bit cliched. But there's truth in that thing of like once you start making it for you think someone's going to like it or it's going to fit into a set, you've already fucked.
But label pressure,
but you shouldn't. Maybe just don't get yourself in that situation.
There you go. So maybe that's why.
Yeah. I think people that make, if we're talking about sort of like things that sound poppier or poppier records, I 100% think that people that make those records want to make those records.
Yeah.
And they really getting off on how huge they can make something and how,
It's a different game.
It's a different game, yeah. But I don't think they're doing it in a kind of conceited way. I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, everyone makes their shit for different purposes. Like, even for me doing this podcast, I'm not going to try and talk to the most famous person to blow the thing up. I want to talk to interesting people that I care about. And same thing with music. Like, if you're out there to try and make the pop music that everyone loves, then that's what you're playing. That's a game.
It's so hard, man. It's so easy to go either way of the spectrum. You can climb up the inside of your own asshole, or you can like please the record label. That's like the two ends of the scale.
Yeah.
You can join the army or you can be an artist. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the beauty, I think, with now technology and where we're at, is people can make their own art the way that they want to make it and put it out on the internet. And if 500 people press play on their shit, then that 500 people, it doesn't mean anything. That they're happy with it,
Yeah. I don't know. Just
make your stuff.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the film score stuff, man.
Film score stuff, well, to be honest, it's mostly been like indie stuff. But I guess I'm really happy that like, I was able to get my degree and do media and, do a media arts course and be, have my head filled with all these other ideas and have it opened up a little bit. So I can draw on that, for doing other. I've used a lot of those theories and a lot of those ideas just in record making, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So having a little bit of like a bit of a clue of how sound design, I mean, people think sound design is just combining sounds. It's more psychological than that. If you're thinking about sound design for film, like what is the character's motivation and what sounds are going to happen. A good like example that was told to me is kind of like you'd have some, a couple of people arguing on a beach. Your choice is pretty endless. It depends what you want to convey in that scene. Maybe there's just the sound of seagulls and no waves. Yeah. Maybe there's something else happening. Maybe it's just like a fucking sine wave, or maybe it's you can hear them shouting, or maybe you can't. There's all these. It's more sort of like a philosophical or psychological idea, sound design for film.
Deep.
Whereas, like, I think sound design, when you're talking about music production, is kind of like, hey, you can just make a slamming sub bass or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess
it's more simple.
It's more, yeah. Well, not simple, but it's just different. I mean, different, philosophy behind it.
But you're now doing things like that, and also you're doing, the Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yeah. So
which is crazy.
That was good. I mean, that was a test because I have taken a little bit of a break, from being creative. I've just been more working as an engineer and stuff. I just needed to take a bit of time off. Didn't feel like really, I say I've taken a bit of a break from being creative, but I've been working on some stuff.
I don't think you would ever stop though, would you? Man?
I haven't fully taken a break, but, the Ninja Turtles thing came at a great time because it was a very small window to do it in.
Explain to us what it is.
Let's just talk about what it is.
Tell us what it is before we explain how it happens.
There's an exhibition right now in Docklands, which is kind of like Paramount's sort of celebration of 40 years of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah. And the exhibition, has everything from like, vintage arcade to like a gallery we have like, 20 or 30 artists contributing to their take on Ninja Turtles. There's a gallery in there. There's like a vintage toy collector who has an entire room filled with Ninja Turtle toys. And there's also the thing that I worked on, which is like this massive sort of projection mapped room, which uses all of the Ninja Turtles, kind of like, I guess, cartoons and comics and films from the last 40 years and projected into multi-screens. But the thing about it was they couldn't use, Paramount didn't want us to use any of the dialogue or the music from any of that stuff.
Sound effects?
And they have to, and the other thing about it, they had to approve anything we did put onto it. So they wanted this thing.
They made it fucking hard.
They made it hard, but like I guess so. I had 5 or 6 weeks to do an entire soundtrack, which was probably like an album length. It was like 13 full pieces of music score.
They have to be interactive.
It had to. That was based on character, and it had to kind of follow the scene sequence because the sequences were put into a narrative.
Yeah.
So it's basically scoring the visuals that I was given.
Yeah.
And obviously no samples could be used, and it all had to be approved by Paramount as well. So it was a little bit of thing, but luckily enough they loved everything, so it worked out really well. But like it was really great. I mean, I guess as like a test to just know that like if I really needed to just smash out something and be happy with it, that I could kind of do it in 5 or 6 weeks.
So it puts limitations on your creativity. But
yeah,
also,
I like that. I think that's a good thing,
Yeah.
having some limitations.
And so it's all original instrumentation, or you use samples from other stuff? Like,
No, it's just instrument. Played everything in and stuff.
I'm just doing the maths a little bit because you're older than me in your head, and I grew up loving the Ninja Turtles. So you're older that you
Than the Ninja Turtles. Yeah.
No. But I mean, but I mean that you would have been not interested in that shit because you're older.
That's true. I actually at my very first meeting for this job, I made the mistake of saying like, guys, I'm a little bit too old for the Ninja Turtles, and then I just sort of thought, we should shut the fuck up.
You're like, which one's the red one?
I'm going to talk myself out of this gig.
But no, it's funny. Like I'm 42 and I'm prime Ninja Turtles age. I think I was 6 or 5 when they sort of had the shit come out and the movie comes out when I was 8 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you're of that age where you're a teenager at that stage. You don't give a fuck about Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, it's funny because like in the mid 80s, like like when you're younger, you're always trying to like sort of like project a little bit older than you are.
Definitely.
So you're not into kid shit when you're 15 or 14 or whatever. You're trying to hang out with the older kids. You're trying to do something a bit more elevated.
Sure.
So that was me, like trying to fucking listen to Triple R and like get into music that was sort of underground, and
the Ninja Turtles.
The Ninja Turtles were a bit too mainstream for me at the time. But
having said that though, man, I did go back last year or the year before and watch the original movie, and it's a good movie.
Well, since doing the soundtrack, I've been schooled a little bit on Ninja. I have a new appreciation of them.
Have you watched the movie?
Yeah, I did watch. Yeah, but
I think it's
I
good.
watched a bunch of stuff, but like the thing that impressed me most was the very first run of comics.
Yeah.
Because those guys had no holds barred. They made it super violent and a bit sort of like gritty. And I think that's the thing I really appreciated about it. It was just kind of like these dudes go, we're just gonna fucking do this thing, and it's a pretty wild idea.
It was black and white then. It was a bit.
That's
it was
right,
a bit darker, not just in color palette, but it was darker.
In its taste as well. Yeah.
I don't want to get you in trouble. Did Paramount celebrate that, or that's not part of the journey? That comic book shit that was a bit darker.
I think it's all part of the same world. Yeah, I think it's just. Man, I don't really. Yeah, I wish I was.
I just mean within that thing that you're doing. Do they?
The early
talk about that, or that it's only really when it hits TV?
Yeah. Like one funny thing I learned that when it was released in the UK, they thought Ninja was a bit too dark.
Super.
Yeah, so it's called Teenage Mutant Super Turtles or something like that.
Or some Mighty Turtles.
Something. So they exchanged, which is kind of dumb, but like. Yeah. So to get back to your question about is it all? I don't know. Maybe they just sort of like don't really embrace like the super gritty stuff.
Yeah, I think
it's more. I think the Ninja Turtles to most people is like it's just fun, right? Yeah. It's a fun thing. And the other thing is like the characters. They're one of those franchises where you can do a lot with them. It's not like. I noticed that like looking at some of those vintage toys in there. They had some crossover stuff, so they had the Ninja Turtles as the Star Trek guys and stuff. Yeah. So you couldn't really have Han Solo dressed up as kind of like from Planet of the... I don't know. They just have all this weird crossover where they can really have fun with those characters,
Yeah. Well, the characters become caricatures of themselves. I know that sounds silly, but they
what
sort
else
of
can
do.
we pair up the Ninja Turtles with?
We can do wrestling Ninja Turtles. We can do Western Ninja Turtles. We can do Ninja Turtles in space.
Yeah.
They
That's
become
right.
like that.
Yeah. So it's really one of those... It's a weird... or a unique franchise in that you can do a lot with it, you know.
I'm pretty
Anyway,
sure
I'm not an expert on Ninja Turtles.
I'm pretty sure one of the dudes, one of the founders, sold his share to the other guy.
Right.
And
Yeah, it was two guys from Boston, I think.
yeah,
was the
and I
deal.
think one sold his share to the other guy at an early stage, just after the merchandise stakes, and then
Damn.
yeah,
Because apparently the merchandise for Ninja Turtles is on par with like the Star Wars thing, how that worked out. Because before Star Wars, you would have had, you know, Planet of the Apes and $6 Million Man, all that kind of stuff.
Masters of the Universe.
Masters of the Universe, which I think was later than Star Wars.
It was.
Star Wars 78 or 77.
Yeah, so Star Wars and then Masters of the Universe, then Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
So I was kind of old enough to remember the Masters of the Universe, then the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
And then after that, fucking Power Rangers. Then it continues.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Star Wars just showed everyone what you could do with, you know, licensing all of their faces on everything.
You know the thing, right? My son's 5 years old, and he's all about Mario. And that was like, you know, in the early 80s, well, you know, early 80s, mid 80s, we were playing Mario.
Yeah, that carried into the 90s as well. With like
and now he's Yoshi, Mario, Luigi, all that sort of shit. So now that is like, that stood the test of time as some 8-bit pixelated fucking characters.
Yeah.
So we went on a tangent, but...
we were talking about like just weird sources for sampling and sounds and stuff. I was going to say, like, I don't know if many people know, but even on the Prowler records, like especially that track Lone Wolf has like the sound of the percussion in that track is just like a dictaphone, it's a cassette recorder for those younger than me.
Before iPhones.
Before our time. But it's just me holding it out the window while it was raining and getting like a percussive sound from the rain.
On
and
the roof.
that holds its way all underneath that Lone Wolf song from Prowler.
So like
I was going to say, like,
pitter patter on the roof.
One really crazy thing that happened in the mid-90s
Yeah.
was that like I knew this guy who was who'd somehow landed a job editing a magazine in New York in 1995 or something. And because I'd been in a band with him, we never recorded anything, and we just sort of rehearsed all these songs, and nothing ever happened with it. He just called me and the bass player that was in that band. It's like, hey, I'm living in the Upper West Side, Manhattan. I'm willing to like move in with my girlfriend into my girlfriend's apartment. You can have my apartment for a few weeks, and you come to New York and we record this record.
What record was it?
So like, well, it still never came out.
But you got to go to the US to stay in a free apartment for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So I got flown over to, was my first trip overseas basically. So I was living in my flat in St Kilda and got flown over to New York to play drums in a studio in New York. And it was crazy. It was like one of the best things ever. And the only thing I really like took out of it was like, I had the foresight to get a dub on that of just all the drums, so that I could take that back later and just ended up using them as samples and stuff.
Well, that's it, man. That's the thing. You've worked on so many projects. I guess when stuff doesn't see the light of day, as long as you keep your own sneaky copies and there's no legalities there, you can always use that for other stuff.
I'm sure there are other things like that I'm forgetting about. There's just so many little I just thought that was that was a big deal for me at the time though, going to record in New York in 95.
Yeah, it's a long way from the 96 tram.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, we've done a fair stint.
I'm
sure
man.
There's more that we could talk about. Unless there's stuff that you really want to talk about, maybe we should think about wrapping it up. I don't know.
Let's just wrap it up. Maybe I'll come back if I've got something new to talk about some other time.
I just want you to come back and we can see, this is the thing, right, with these episodes. I want the first one to be like, this is the journey. And then next time you come back, what are you up to? Yeah, we're doing this. I forgot to tell you last time, fuck, this was funny. You know what I mean? And then we bring it back. That's the plan.
Yeah.
And I'd love you to come back and do that.
Awesome. That'd be cool.
Before you go, I want to ask you, I want you to put someone on the spot. Who would you like to see on this show in the future, man?
I reckon you should get Daniel San.
Yes, I'd love to.
I think he'd have some great stories because he came up in Canberra via also Sydney. And he's been around for a long time and he's got some stories. And the other thing, because I see Dan San a bit, and he never gets asked to do stuff like that. And I think he'd be a really great, storyteller. He'd have some good stuff.
I will definitely, and I think I may have reached out to him in the past, but if I haven't already, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to use you as a validation point that he comes on and does
cool.
it.
Yeah, cool.
Well, Plutonic Lab, Plutonic. Whichever name you want.
Yeah, it's silly.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Peace.